All right, we're about to dive into maybe the biggest story there is, the story of life itself. We're going to start super small with the microscopic blueprint of a single gene, and then zoom all the way out to this complex planet-wide game of survival to really get a grip on how it all works and our pretty unique place in it. You know, for almost 4 billion years, life has been playing by a pretty simple set of rules. You eat, you survive, and you reproduce. But then there's this one species, us, that's become so successful, we're now rewriting the whole rule book. And as you can imagine, that changes absolutely everything.
So to really understand our impact, we've got to understand the game first. Our journey's going to begin with the biggest picture of all, this great web of life and how the energy flows through it.
When you boil it down, it's really all about energy. And the simplest way to track that energy is with something called a food chain. It's basically a straight line showing who eats who. And it always starts with a producer. That's an organism that makes its own energy, usually from the sun.
Let's take a classic example from the Antarctic. It all kicks off with phytoplankton, these tiny little plants making their own food. They get eaten by krill, which then get eaten by fish. Those fish become lunch for a leopard seal. And right at the top of this particular chain, you've got the killer whale. See? It's a really direct, step-by-step transfer of energy.
But here's the crucial rule that limits, well, everything. At each and every step up that chain, less than 10% of the energy actually gets passed on. Most of it's just used for living or lost as heat. This is precisely why food chains can't go on forever. The energy just fizzles out.
Okay, so that's the big picture. Now, let's zoom in. Way in. We're going to look at a single organism and its own personal survival guide. All the incredible features that let it thrive in its little corner of the world.
Just think about how perfectly engineered the polar bear is for the Arctic. That white fur, it's not just for camouflage. The hairs are actually hollow, and they funnel heat right down to its black skin, which is great at soaking up the sun's warmth. Then you've got a thick layer of fat for insulation, and even a special heat exchange system in its limbs so its paws don't freeze on the ice. Every single feature is a genius solution to a life-or-death problem.
And that survival guide gets a total rewrite for every different environment. I mean, just look at the difference between a water lily and a cactus. The lily has these weak little stems because the water holds it up, right? But a cactus, it needs a thick, fleshy stem to store water. The lily has huge leaves to float and catch the sun, while a cactus shrinks its leaves down to spines to stop water from evaporating. Two plants, two completely different rule books for survival.
So where do all these brilliant adaptations even come from? For that, we have to zoom in even further, right down to the secret code that allows life to change over time, evolution.
The engine driving all of this is natural selection, and it works in 4 pretty basic steps. First, you've got variation. No two individuals are ever exactly the same. Second, the environment applies some kind of pressure, like a freezing climate or a new predator on the block. Third, some of those individuals happen to have traits that give them an edge. And fourth, the survivors get to pass on their winning traits. You let that run for a few generations and bam, the whole population adapts.
But wait, where does that initial variation come from? Its ultimate source is something called mutation, a random, spontaneous change in the genetic code. Now, most mutations are harmless, some are bad, but every once in a while, one creates a new helpful trait. This is the raw material, the creative spark for natural selection to work with.
For most of Earth's history, the environment was the only thing doing the selecting. But then humans figured out how to take the wheel. In what we call artificial selection, we get to decide which traits are fit. You know, the biggest fruit, the fastest horse, whatever we want. It's an incredibly powerful tool, but it comes with a major catch. By selecting for just a handful of traits, we actually end up reducing the genetic variation that nature totally depends on.
And that brings us to our final act. Let's zoom back out and take a hard look at how our species isn't just playing the game anymore. We are fundamentally changing the rules for everyone and everything else.
It all really starts with our sheer numbers. For most of human history, there weren't that many of us. Then, around the year 1800, we finally hit 1 billion. But just look at the speed of that curve since then. It's gone practically vertical. This incredible growth has put a kind of demand on the planet's resources that's completely off the charts.
And those demands have real consequences. We're clearing huge areas of forest for things like farmland and palm oil plantations for biofuels. And look, this isn't just about losing some trees, it's about completely erasing entire habitats,
pushing incredible species like the orangutan right to the very edge of extinction.
Then, of course, there's pollution. The tragic story of Minamata Bay in Japan is such a powerful lesson. A factory there released mercury into the water. At first, the concentration was low, but it built up at every single step of the food chain, from tiny plankton to fish and finally to the local people, with absolutely devastating results. It's a terrifying example of how that web of life can concentrate a poison.
And out in the oceans, our impact is just as huge. Overfishing doesn't just mean we're taking too many of one kind of fish. The methods we often use, like dragging these massive, heavy nets along the seafloor, can literally destroy entire habitats like coral reefs, causing the whole ecosystem to just collapse.
So here we are. We've become the single most dominant force on this planet. The game is now well and truly in our hands. And that means our next move, well, it matters more than ever before.
This is it. This is the fundamental question we all have to face. We've proven we can alter the planet's systems on a massive scale. The real question now is, can we manage them responsibly?
The guiding idea for that next move has a name: sustainable development. It's all about finding that critical balance, meeting our own needs without wrecking the ability of future generations and all the other species out there to meet theirs.
And this isn't just some nice idea. These strategies are already happening. We're tackling the problem from all kinds of angles. Internationally, with agreements like CITES that crack down on the illegal trade of endangered species. Genetically, with amazing projects like the Millennium Seed Bank that's creating a backup of the world's plants. And ecologically, using smarter policies like fishing quotas and restocking programs to help damaged ecosystems bounce back.
For billions of years, life has just been this unstoppable force of adaptation. But we've introduced a change that's so fast and so huge that the old rules might not apply anymore. So the real challenge, the next great adaptation, has to be ours. Can we learn to see ourselves not as masters of the game, but as players within it? Honestly, that's the question that's going to define our future.